tonight's council meeting. Thank you all for your attendance. And I would ask my chaplain, the Reverend Scargill, to say prayers, please. There is no need to stand.
Reverend Scargill, you need to unmute.
Some words from the Book of Kings. King Solomon said, "Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, able to discern between good and evil. For who can govern this, your great people?" And it pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this. So we pray. Almighty and eternal God, to whom we must all give account, guide with your Spirit the council of this borough of Fylde, that they may be faithful to the mind of Christ and seek in all their purposes to enrich our common life. Through Jesus Christ, your Son, our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
And a prayer of thanksgiving for the life of Prince Philip. Eternal God, we give you thanks for the life of Prince Philip, for the love he showed among us, and for his devotion to duty. We remember his vision and imagination, his interest in young people, and his concern for your creation. Inspire us with the same commitment to serve friend, neighbour, and stranger alike, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Rest eternal grant unto him, O Lord, and let light perpetual shine upon him. Merciful God, be close to all who mourn, especially the Queen and all members of the royal family. May they know the hope of your promises and the comfort of your love. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Scargill. May I ask members now that we will have a minute's silence in memory of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. Thank you. Thank you, members. We now go on to procedural items. And the first one is declaration of interest. Do any members have any personal or prejudicial interest to declare?
Mr. Mayor, I can't see any of them, but I am having connection problems, so I may not have my eyes across everybody, unfortunately.
Item 2, confirmation of minutes. I will propose from the chair that the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of March 2021 be confirmed as a correct record. I do have a seconder.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to second the proposal.
Thank you. All those in favour, please show.
Mr. Mayor, I can see hands going up, and I can see at least 37 of them, counting 40 hands raised, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think there's 40 there.
Thank you, that is clearly carried. Right, mayor's announcements. I just have one announcement, and that is to say that yesterday I was invited to Blackburn Cathedral for the Evensong service in honour of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. A very sad occasion, but it was a privilege to be able to go there and represent Fylde. Thank you. Agenda item 4, Chief Executive's communications. Chief Executive, do you have any communications?
None to report this evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Item 5, question from members of the council. There are no questions tonight from members of the council this evening. Thank you. Item 6, questions from members of the public. There is one question from a member of the public this evening. Mr. Rayner, would you please like to ask your question?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question of councillors at this meeting. I remain respectful and appreciative of the good work performed by members and officers. Most members will be aware of my altruistic interest in seeing improved regeneration effort. Can I ask what holding statement of intent can be given regarding the 10 ideas that I forwarded from public opinion to help fill empty premises in St Anne's? I'm aware of the ARG empty property grant and the future arrival of a town centres manager. So a response orientated towards the 10 ideas from the public would be welcome. Mr. Mayor, would you like me to read out the ideas?
Yes, you can do, Mr. Rayner.
Thank you. The ideas are ranked by popularity, and the most popular topic was that the borough act as an honest broker with empty property landlords. Secondly, they liked that the borough reduced rates payable or to lobby instead for revaluation of rates. They wanted the borough to attract retailers with a strong preference towards markets. A lot of mention was made of Altrincham. They wanted free parking, perhaps via a DIS system, a la Keswick. They wanted the borough to orchestrate a buy local campaign. They would like multiple off-season events to extend the season. Late night opening, out of hours promotion effort by the existing communications officers within the council, improve empty shop appearance and charge the cost of this back to landlords. And they'd like to see a relaxed approach by the planning department for businesses. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Redcliffe, I understand you are going to respond to this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I first of all thank Mr. Rayner for his question to the council and his expression of appreciation and respect for the good work performed by members and officers. Can I also take this opportunity as well to express our respect for his altruism, and to say to him that we surely share a common commitment with regard to the future regeneration of all of our 3 town centres, St Anne's, Lytham and Kirkham. In addressing the 10 ideas selected by Mr. Rayner, and he's just read them out, those are from a bank of suggestions from the public, which were initially forwarded to the Town Centre Working Group. And so I would like to briefly provide some context to the Council's response. Recent changes in consumer habits have resulted in an increase in the number of vacant shops in town centres across the country. And the town centres in Fylde, particularly St Anne's, have not been immune from these trends. Indeed, the effect of the COVID virus has been to accelerate these trends. In order to redress the situation, Fylde Council established a town centres working group of councillors who in the last year have been actively working with business groups that represent the businesses trading in our town centres. These groups include St Anne's Enterprise Partnership, Lytham Business Partnership, and Kirkham Business Group, who all now have representatives on our town centre working group subgroups for those towns. Additionally, these groups include a cross-section of elected members from Fylde Council and St Anne's Town Council. Mr. Rayner will already be aware of the work of the Town Centre Working Group because of an active dialogue established with him in recent months, involving several discussions with myself, other members of the group, including Councillor O'Rourke, Colin Ballard of St Anne's Enterprise Partnership, Tim Dixon of the tourism team at Fylde, and indeed Mark Evans, Head of Planning and Housing. Furthermore, the 18 or more ideas that were presented to the Town Centre Working Group by Mr. Rayner have been fully discussed and explored in the Town Centre Core Group and both the Lytham and St Anne's subgroups with feedback provided to him. Mr. Rayner will therefore hopefully be aware already of much of the work going on behind the scenes at Fylde. Clearly, many of the issues raised will be progressed by the town centre's manager, who will be in post next month. But in the meantime, the council and the town centre working group have been engaging with a range of stakeholders to address the issues raised. As you've already heard, the 10 most popular of the ideas submitted to the Town Centre Working Group, which form the ideas and core of the questions, are as follows. 1. Act as an honest broker with empty property landlords. Clearly, the issue of empty shops is a significant challenge facing our high streets locally and nationally, and is a key priority in our attempts to restore vitality to our high streets in Fylde. This particularly, but not exceptionally, applies to St Anne's. Empty premises, to some extent, act as a barometer for the health of a centre, and also provide a negative perception to residents, shoppers, current and potential businesses, investors and visitors alike. Using the additional restrictions grant, a discretionary grant scheme has been established that will assist new businesses to become established in empty shops. This involves the provision of grants for up to 50% of startup costs for new businesses on the high street, up to a maximum of £10,000. Although it's early days, there has already been encouraging interest locally. The council has recently appointed an economic development officer, now in post, who has already begun to engage with various landlords and businesses, and has started work on collating a property register, which will help to facilitate discussions with landlords about their intentions. Additionally, a relationship with local property agents is being cultivated in order to better understand the dynamics of the local market. The Town Centre Working Group has been working closely with the 3 town centre business groups to explore opportunities for new uses. Repurposing space in our centres will be a vital element of any recovery and regeneration strategy. Again, the town centre manager will play a vital role in specifically supporting the above measures. Point 2, reduce rates payable or lobby for rates valuations. There are currently a range of measures in place to assist businesses with their business rates through various COVID support packages. Notwithstanding these specific COVID measures, there are other business rate relief schemes in operation, including small business rates relief, where eligible businesses are awarded rate relief up to 100%, where the rateable value is less than £12,001, and a sliding scale with a rateable value between £12,001 and £15,000. Point 3, attract retailers with a strong preference for markets, in brackets, Altrincham style. Whilst there are several markets that operate in the local area, including craft and farmers markets, there is certainly potential for adding to and expanding projects in this sphere. Part of the town centre manager role will certainly be to explore options to improve the current provision and offer, and also consider where they could be located. Point 4, free parking disc system a la Keswick. The disc parking system Mr. Rayner refers to, I believe, is relying on street parking in Cumbria, referring to this rather than free car parking on car parks in Keswick. As in Fylde, during the first lockdown, parking charges were suspended, but have now recommenced. Free on-street parking for a limited period is available in Fylde, a Lancashire County Council management responsibility. The issue of parking provision and free parking is always a topic high on any list, which considers options to support town centres, and one that is often advocated to boost those centres, although it does divide opinion in terms of its effectiveness, as we heard at a recent LGA seminar. It figures prominently in discussions the Town Centre Working Group have with local stakeholders when deciding on the direction of strategic changes. Point 5, buy local campaign. This is being promoted through the business groups and Fylde Council social media, and further consideration is being given to signage and shop stickers and other promotional ways forward. 6, multiple off-season events to extend the season. These are under consideration with STEP, St Anne's Enterprise Partnership, taking a key role in St Anne's, but will be subject to review taking account of the latest COVID guidance. Fylde Council Tourism are exploring the possibility of new events this autumn, and details will be provided when arrangements can be confirmed. The Kite event will hopefully take place if the COVID roadmap is on track, albeit in a much slimmed down version. Mr. Rayner has been invited to forward any potential interest from event organisers to Fylde Council and STEP, so that options can be explored with them. The Town Centre Working Group consider that events can and do play a significant role in increasing footfall in all of our town centres, and off-season and season extensions, if planned in a coordinated way, can further boost the local economy, particularly in attractive visitor destinations. Fylde Council has a proud track record of delivering such events, and this offer can be supplemented by working closely with STEP and other organisations. Late night opening, point 7. This is an initiative which will be pursued by the town centre manager. A late night opening trial in the pre-Christmas period received limited support from local businesses when it operated over a limited number of nights. This scheme will be revisited, however. Studies show that opening times for town centre premises increasingly need to be flexible and responsive to changing consumer habits and work patterns, and ensure, if at all possible, they're open when customers need their goods and services. Point 8. Out of town promotion effort by existing comms officers. Currently underway via the comms team, they're looking at joint working arrangements. They're being explored with both Wyre and Blackpool. ICG, an external public relations organisation, has been appointed by the comms team. Targeted Facebook work is planned to take place once the COVID roadmap for the summer is confirmed. Partnership work with Market Lancashire has now commenced. In the summer, again subject to COVID restrictions, a new vehicle branded up as a mobile tourism bus will tour, promoting the Fylde area. 9. Improve empty shop appearances, charge back to businesses. This issue is being actively explored, and STEP and St Anne's Council, through its CAN group, have looked at various properties in St Anne's in particular. Our belief is that charging landlords will not necessarily incentivise them to take appropriate action, but financial assistance may be necessary. Point 10. Relaxation of planning department for business. One of the key objectives of the local plan is to promote the vibrancy and vitality of town centres. And this element is also a priority identified in the council's corporate plan. The council's policies and their operation are constantly kept under review to ensure that there are no unintended consequences, and to make sure that we try to achieve a fair balance between the needs of the environment and the needs of the economy. I sincerely hope that the questions submitted have been answered to Mr. Rayner's satisfaction. They certainly raise pertinent and important issues relating to empty shops and indeed to town centre regeneration in general. Thank you for your question. Do you have a supplementary question you'd like to ask, Mr. Rayner?
Yes, please, Councillor Redcliffe.
Thank you.
My question arising from your response is focused upon timescales. But first of all, I would like to thank you, Councillor Redcliffe, for giving such an all-encompassing response. You touched upon trade bodies and all 10 of the key suggestions of the 18 from the public that I forwarded to your group in November. I'm very pleased to hear about the property register, which hadn't been something that the group put to you. The 40 plus empty shops in St Anne's and the 7 plus in Lytham are not COVID related. Many of these shops are long-term empty. And in the field of both regeneration and business, it's wise to have goals like those that you've touched upon. So I'm pleased that you've embraced those things. However, for goals to become outcomes, we say that they've got to be SMART. That stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and most importantly, time-bound. Can I ask you to pick just 2 of the 10 ideas and give those watching a time-bound indication of when the public can expect to see results from those 2 ideas?
Well, first of all, I'll give you a general answer in that timeframes can be useful. They can be useful, but they have to be realistic in terms of the targets that they set. A number of these particular proposals that we have been looking at tonight, we can actually put dates in terms of this year. For example, the additional restrictions grant and the application of that grant finishes at the end of this year. So we would want to see progress this year in terms of that grant being effective and turning empty premises into premises that are actually contributing to the vitality of the town centre. The other thing that I would hope to see, to answer the second point, because you wanted 2 examples, is we've been exploring extensions to the season, etc., and events. And in St Anne's and Lytham, and perhaps also in Kirkham as well, we do believe that events are absolutely essential to the future vitality of our centres, because we know that they are destination centres for visitors, not just there for residents. And if we, working with STEP and other organisations and Fylde Council Tourism, can actually this year deliver late season events that can boost the footfall and deliver off-season events right up until the end of this year, even in winter time, I would see that as a very, very important target, and we will work very hard to do it. But once again, Mr. Rayner, thank you for your questions and thank you for your supplementary question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Radcliffe. Thank you, Mr. Rayner. Agenda item 7, notice of motion, apprenticeships. And I invite Councillor Ben Aitken to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, colleagues. I'm going to give you some information which you might be quite surprised about regarding the apprentice scheme in Fylde. First of all, Alex Scrimmins is at present in charge of the apprentice scheme, and Alex Scrimmins is an ex-apprentice YTS person. So is Tracy Morrison and Hazel McNichol. Now, what I'm going to tell you probably is saying, well, oh, what a fantastic scheme Fylde ago. I didn't bring this notice of motion to tell you about how wonderful the scheme is. However, I have got information which I can't turn around and say it isn't actually saying what a wonderful job they're doing. So I will begin. Apprentice scheme began in Fylde in 2001. Fylde will tell you that the apprentices are paid a proper wage, not the national apprentice rate. Currently, there are 3 apprentices, and they're looking to recruit 3 more. Types of apprenticeship: a building control surveyor, heavy vehicle service and maintenance, town planner, chartered surveyor. They are stressing professional development and recruiting of talent. The council prides itself on appraisals and monitoring, as it's required to have 2.3% of the workforce as apprentices. And with 230 full-time posts, this equates to 5.4 apprentices. Now, when I first started looking at all this, I hadn't a clue about the apprentice scheme in Fylde, and I don't know how many of you actually did. I'm afraid I hold my hand up and say my knowledge was very little. Now, while I was on the Arboricultural Working Party, I already recall that we had £25,000 to spend on the planting of trees. And this is where one of the reasons I brought this up comes in. Well, when they first started talking about planting the trees, it was a great idea. And we soon found out that Fylde did not have the potential to plant the trees. In fact, the trees were planted by a professional company. And although they did an exceptionally good job, the trees there could have been an awful lot more trees planted if we had somebody in-house taking part in that program. At my last Arboricultural Working Party meeting, I suggested that we had an apprentice. It hasn't been brought forward anywhere, and it's been hush-hush. Now, one of the reasons why I was so keen on putting forward this notice of motion is to try and promote more gardening positions, in particular, more tree planting. Now, I'm not trying to get on a debate about tree planting, and I think the apprentice scheme, as I've just mentioned to you, is quite a good scheme in Fylde. And this particular setup that we've got, if you notice that towards the end of September, we have an additional £3,000 per apprentice. And those apprentices could be of any age. It's not limited to youths. So one of the things my ignorance has brought out is that we actually need an annual summary of Fylde's apprentice scheme. So I would be asking Alex Scrimmons and the Chief Exec to actually just inform all councillors about the actual apprentice scheme in a better way than I've just said. So, Mr. Mayor, my notice of motion, which I have a seconder in Mike Withers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Withers.
Yes, I'd like to second the notice of motion, and I reserve the right to speak on it in the discussion after.
Right, thank you. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this notice of motion? Ms. Oak, please show.
I can see Councillor Settle signaling, and then there's also Councillor Withers as well.
Councillor Settle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will most definitely be voting for the motion. As an ex-apprentice myself, albeit I have to say some while ago, I know that as well as getting excellent training in the relevant discipline, an apprentice gains a unique insight into how the organisation works by the on-the-job training aspects. And as an added benefit to the organisation, I believe apprentices are extremely loyal to that organisation, far longer, in my experience, from the average employee. So there's a double benefit there in that you have a well-trained employee and you have them for, on average, longer than the normal employee. So as I say, I will most definitely be voting for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, who was the other person who wishes to speak?
There's Councillor Withers, but there's also now Councillor Threlfall as well.
Councillor Trample. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to thank Councillor Aiken for this issue. Apprenticeships, I find, provide a vital employment for our school and university leavers, giving a foundation for our young people a place in society. I welcome apprenticeships at Fylde Council and also throughout our borough. The council will give encouragement for all apprenticeships which we can provide. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
There's Councillor Armitt as well now, Mr. Mayor, before Councillor Withers.
Nobody else?
Councillor Hardy.
Councillor Hardy.
Armitt.
Sorry, Councillor Armitt.
No worries, it's been a while. I think this is brilliant. I'm a governor at Middlesex High, and I do the careers liaison point for the. And I'm promoting apprenticeships hugely. They're a great way for people to get into different things. Also at Post Office, we implement huge these across all areas, up to and including doing a law degree. And of course, you therefore get on the job experience. You don't get any university debt, and you end up with a properly recognised law degree in our legal department. So they're fantastic at all levels for all people, and a great thing that isn't being picked up enough by enough companies. So I welcome this.
Mr. Mayor, there's Councillor Trudgill and Councillor Withers now.
Councillor Trudgill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I very much support Ben in this, and certainly support what Councillor Settle mentioned about how loyal apprentices can be. I was an apprentice myself and trained apprentices, worked with apprentices in engineering, have interviewed apprentices and spent a lot of time with them, and I have seen, you know, the outcomes, the wide-ranging experience they get, the loyalty they have to their companies and their organisations. So I fully support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Trudgill. And Ian, who is the other?
Councillor Redcliffe is now signalling chairman, as well as Councillor Withers.
Right, sorry. Councillor Redcliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to endorse comments of other members, really, and very, very strongly and passionately support this motion. I think it's an excellent motion. It's about investing in the future in young people and other people who want to go into training, perhaps retraining, and it also adds to the quality of the workforce. So it's a win-win-win, and heartily endorse this particular proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Redcliffe. Right, if there are no more speakers, then we will. Oh, sorry,
There is Councillor.
Councillor Withers.
Oh, finally, thank you. Yes, I also want to speak in favour of this notice of motion. I think it's great to have heard the other councillors who are also all in favour. Apprenticeship schemes have always been a very useful way to get particularly young people straight from school or university accustomed to the working life. My own company has taken on apprentices over the years, and we've still got an employee now who's been with us more than 30 years, who first started on a YTS scheme. So that's how long ago that was. I think it's a great way to help employment figures. I think that the objective of apprenticeship schemes, contrary to the cynical view sometimes taken by non-business people, that they're a way of getting cheap labour. On the contrary, the objective is to establish people in a position within the companies, and also to ultimately to keep the employees employed for a long time, for a number of years, and to establish them as an asset to the company. And that's always been my view, and that's always the way we've taken it, and the people, other business people I know, have done the same thing. So I think it's a wonderful scheme. I think it does an awful lot of good. I think ultimately it will help the employment figures in the country, which has been such a success under the current government and since the Brexit poll. And also, of course, the current pandemic, this is only going to help as well. So I think it's a thoroughly good thing, and I commend it to the council.
Thank you. Right, so we'll go to the vote now. All those in favour, please show.
Hands are being raised, Mr. Mayor, and there are 42 hands, 43 hands that I can see raised in one way or another, Mr. Mayor, in favour of that.
That is clearly carried then. Thank you. Agenda item 8 is the invitation to accept the appointment as mayor for 2021-22. And I invite Councillor Paul Hodgson to introduce the item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep this very short. I'm not one for long speeches. So it gives me great pleasure in recommending and nominating Councillor Elaine Silverwood as the mayor, as the filed mayor for 2021/2022, and I do have a seconder.
Thank you. Councillor Linda Nutley, I understand you are going to second this.
Yes, Nolte, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted to second this proposition. I know Elaine will serve as well, and I'll make further remarks at the mayor making. But delighted to second it.
Thank you, Councillor Linda Nutley.
Thank you.
Did you say Nutley? All right. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this?
No. There's Councillor Buckley, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and also very briefly, if I may thank Councillor Silverwood for putting herself forward to be Mayor for 21-22. At one point I thought, Mr. Mayor, we would be asking you to do a third year, but I do hope that Councillor Silverwood will have a very enjoyable and successful year. I hope that COVID retreats and some normality resumes. And Mr. Mayor, again, but very briefly, if you would indulge me, please allow me to use this opportunity to thank you for your sterling service as Mayor have filed for 2 years in extraordinary circumstances, and for accepting the task with such good grace and humour, even when this second year has been dominated by the duty of running the council meetings on Zoom rather than the usual public engagements and events that make up so much of the role. From us all, sincere thanks to you, your deputy and the mayoral team. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Does anybody else wish to speak on this item?
No, Mr. Mayor, I don't think so.
Oh, okay, we'll go to the vote then. All those in favour, please show.
Mr. Mayor, I can see 43 hands raised in favour of that.
Right, thank you. That is clearly carried then. Thank you. Item 9 is the invitation to accept the appointment as Deputy Mayor for 2021-22. And I invite Councillor Elaine Silverwood to introduce the item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you everybody for your endorsement, and hopefully 2021-22 will be COVID free as soon as possible. And I too would like to thank Councillor Jakes for having done a fantastic 2 years. Well done. It now gives me pleasure to invite Councillor Cheryl Little as my Deputy Mayor. There may be a few raised eyebrows at my deputy, but I'm absolutely delighted to invite her, and I'm sure that we'll have a fantastic year. There is, I do have a seconder for that item this evening, and that seconder is, because there's been a few changes. Thank you, Councillor Small. Yes, can I invite you to second the item, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted to be able to second this proposal and look forward to actually having the opportunity at some point in the future to discuss the merits of the Deputy Mayor. Thank you very much.
Look forward to that. Thank you. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this?
Can't see anybody signalling, Mr. Mayor, no.
No?
Sorry,
Okay.
there's Councillor Green now, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say I can't imagine how many years it is since we've seen a mayor and a deputy mayor of opposition and leading group. And I just wanted to say I'm delighted to see it, and I look forward to you guys working together and working with you. Thank you.
There's nobody else, then we'll go to the vote. All those in favour, please show.
Mr. Mayor, I can see 42 hands raised in favour of that, Mr. Mayor.
That is clearly carried then. Thank you. Right. Agenda item 10 is the confirmation of leader and deputy leader for 2021-22. And I invite Councillor Trevor Fiddler to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am pleased to have the opportunity to propose to Council that Councillor Karen Buckley and Councillor Roger Small continue in their roles as leader and deputy leader of Fylborough Council for the ensuing municipal year 2021-22. Mr. Mayor, I so move.
Thank you. I understand, Councillor Trevor, that you want to second this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy to second this item.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I can see Councillor Thomas and Councillor Fazackerly's hands raised. I wasn't sure whether they were intended to. One of them's gone down, so there's Councillor Fazackerly with her.
So just Councillor Fazackerly then, is it? Right, Councillor Fazackerly. Would you like to speak?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, my hand icon won't disappear.
Oh, right. It was a leftover, was it?
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Then if nobody wishes to speak on this, then we will go to the vote. All those in favour, please show.
Mr. Mayor, just looking at the hands being raised, and there are 33, 34, 35 hands which I can see raised in favour of that, Mr. Mayor.
Right, that is clearly carried then, thank you. Right, so agenda item 11, schedule of meetings for 2021-22, and I invite Councillor Karen Buckley to introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is to approve the schedule as before all members, and the dates are there for all to see. There is just one change to note, please, Mr. Mayor, and that is to move the Operational Management Committee meeting from the 8th of June to the 16th of June. The chairman is hoping to be away, and we don't know whether he'll achieve that, but just in case. So that's the one change, to move the Operational Management Committee meeting from 8th of June to the 16th of June. And to approve the schedule of meetings as amended. May I also just put members on note that you will see from the schedule of meetings that the AGM is due later on in May. I think it's the 26th of May. As things stand with the COVID restrictions, that will be a very a formal official meeting only without the ceremony. But there is planned to have a mayoral ceremony tentatively on Tuesday the 13th of July. Please, if members would please make a note of that, pencil that in your diaries. Tuesday the 13th of July, you'll note that is after the date of the 21st of June when restrictions are lifted, though it is hoped that that will be a joyous occasion, a ceremonial occasion to add to our diary. So it will be confirmed, I'm sure, members, but you may want to pencil that in. So I move the recommendation with that slight change. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Roger Small, I understand you are to second this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy to second the recommendations here. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this item?
I hesitate to say Councillor Fazackerly has a hand raised, Mr. Mayor.
You've got a leftover.
The hand's gone down.
Mr. Mayor, I cannot get the raise hand icon to disappear.
Oh dear.
I can do no other.
Thank you. Right, so there is nobody else who wishes to speak, then we'll go to the vote. All those in favour, please show.
Mayor, I can see 41, 42, 43 hands raised in favour of that, Mr. Mayor.
Right, thank you, that is clearly carried. Right, agenda item 12 is the confirmation of committees and allocations of membership. And I invite Councillor Karen Butley to introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And this is a procedural item again that comes to council at this time of year, when some members will change seats and there'll be some changes to responsibilities as well. The recommendations, Mr. Mayor, are set out for you on page 16. You will see that there has been a few changes to committee memberships, but they are all set out for you there. I'd just like to take the opportunity, as we do have a change in chairmanships, I'd like to put on record my thanks to Councillor Little for her many years in chairing the TNL committee, and thank you for her sterling work. And I move the recommendations, Mr. Mayor, and I have a seconder, Councillor Small. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Small.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I'm very happy to second these recommendations. Yeah.
Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this item?
There is, Mr. Mayor, there's Councillor Arnott.
Councillor Arnott. Right, Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just quickly in reference to Councillor Little, Cheryl Little. I've been shadowing on the tourism for some time now, and I can't think of a more dedicated and more passionate chair that I've worked under. And her and I have banged heads a lot, and we've had a lot of conflict, and we don't agree on everything. But she is incredibly respectful, and we found a great way of working, of getting information before meetings. And I'm going to miss you, Councillor Little. And it's one of the most important committees we have, because Lytham St Anne's particularly is all about tourism and particularly about leisure. And it's huge shoes to step into for quite a newly elected councillor as well. But Cheryl, all the best and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Arnott. If there's nobody else, then we will go to the vote. All those in favour, please show.
And then I can see 39 votes in favour of that. 39 in favour, Mr. Mayor.
Right, thank you. That is clearly carried. Agenda item 13, appointments to outside bodies for 2021-22. And I invite Councillor Karen Butley to introduce this item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Again, another procedural item to come to council at this time of year to recommend, confirm and to make changes to appointments to outside bodies. Mr. Mayor, you will see that there's a couple of changes, but I do wish to add to those after having had some representations from members. So if you won't mind, I'll just go through those, please. The recommendation, therefore, Mr. Mayor, is to confirm the nominated appointments to outside bodies for the remainder of 21-22 municipal year as shown in Appendix 1, subject to the following changes. So firstly, to nominate Councillor Chris Dixon as the Council's representative on the Lancashire Enterprise Partnership Joint Scrutiny Committee. Secondly, to nominate the leader of the Council as the Council's representative at the Local Government Association General Assembly. Thirdly, to increase the seats on the Education Liaison Committee to 3 and to add Councillor Trevor Fiddler as the Council's third representative. 4, to substitute Councillor Michael Sayward for Councillor Cheryl Little as the Council's representative on the Fairhaven Lake and Gardens Restoration Project Board. And 5, to substitute Councillor Frank Andrews for Councillor Bobby Rigby as one of the Council's representatives on the Police and Crime Commissioner panel. Those are the changes, Mr. Mayor, and I move the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roger Small, I understand you are going to second this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I'm happy to second those recommendations with the actual changes that the leaders put forward as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this item?
There doesn't appear to be, Mr. Mayor, no.
Thank you. I will go to the vote then. All those in favour, please show.
Mr. Mayor, there are at present 41 votes, 42 votes in favour of that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, that's clearly carried. Item 14, Boundary Commission review and the warding arrangements. And I invite Councillor Karen Butley to introduce this item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members are aware that the Local Government Boundary Commission is currently undertaking a review of Falborough Council, which will reduce the number of councillors and redraw the ward boundaries across Fylde. The cross-party working group, which previously recommended a council number of 37, reconvened in February to consider the warding arrangements. On the Boundary Commission's website, they set out their requirements and state, the aim of the electoral review is to recommend ward boundaries that mean each councillor represents approximately the same number of voters. We also aim to ensure that the ward boundaries reflect the interests and identities of local communities, as well as promoting effective local government. The projected electorate in 2026 for Fylde, which is the forecast used by the Boundary Commission, is 69,001. And therefore, with 37 members, the average number of electors to councillor is 1,865. That compares to an average number of electors to councillor today at 1,225, which means that each councillor will be representing around 50% more electors in the future. Inevitably, that means larger geographies to cover, and that is most evident in rural areas. The working group was advised to start the mapping exercise with a blank piece of paper, but could use parish councils as building blocks. That is what we did. Our officers were extremely helpful with giving us a starting point and kept us on track. Single member wards were avoided, and I know this isn't universally accepted, because of the benefit of sharing the load, of ensuring representation is available as far as possible despite absence or illness, and strengthening the voice for parishes on the borough council. For example, by joining parish councils to a ward, you may find that rather than having one council representative, one councillor in 51, you would instead have 2 or 3 in 37. Having 2 and 3 member wards brings the borough council closer to residents in the rural areas. Table 1 on page 31 details the proposed 15 wards and the electoral variance from the 1,865 average. The Boundary Commission have made it clear that they are seeking variances within plus or minus 10%, and any that don't achieve this will need a strong argument to persuade the Commission. As can be seen from the table, all wards are within variance apart from Freckleton, which for 3 councillors is minus 13.4%. However, such is the strong community identity of Freckleton, the working group thought it justified to go outside of tolerance, particularly as doing otherwise had knock-on effects in adjacent areas that could not be reconciled. Mr. Mayor, this has been a time-consuming and complex piece of work, and I'd like to thank fellow members of the working group for their contribution. For the most part, we were in agreement, and where we weren't, which was in the latter stages around ward boundaries, alternatives were not offered that fit the criteria. May I thank our officers in the Democratic and corporate teams for their support, and particularly mention Ian Curtis for getting to grips with the mapping software to aid our discussions. Thank you very much to him. Mr. Mayor, I move the recommendation to approve the document at Appendix 1 as the Council's final proposal to the Local Government Boundary Commission for warding arrangements. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a seconder in Councillor Small.
Thank you. Councillor Small.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy to second this. May I reserve the right to speak? Thank you.
Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this item?
There is at least 3.
Yes, there are, Mr. Mayor. There are Councillor Lee, Councillor Nolte.
And Councillor Hayhurst as well. Apologies, I think Ian's having some technical difficulties.
Okay, so Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to ask for this to be a recorded vote, and I do have the required members to vote on this. Thank you.
Councillor Nolte.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I was very pleased to be part of this working group, and I'd like to thank all the group for, it was hard work. It was not an easy task, and we worked well together, as Councillor Buckley said, for the most part, very well. And I'd like to thank all the officers. I think it was a tremendous task done in a very short time, and I appreciate all their efforts. I'd always hoped that to be able to support this boundary submission, that the proposal that came up from the group, but sadly at the end of the day this was not the case. I think we worked extremely well together in the first part, leading to unanimous support of the approval of the council size figures, and we started it well again when we started discussions on the warding pattern. But I do feel, and I still feel, we got lost somewhere in the middle when the focus turned to the rural areas and suddenly everything moved very rapidly. I know the rural file very well, as I know a lot of my colleagues do, and Councillor Rhodes unfortunately was not able to continue on the group, but together we felt that that the rural file, the solutions for the rural file were not appropriate in some instances. We worked well, but at the end of the day, I feel there's a few areas, quite a few areas in the proposal, which I feel will not work together under the requirements of the Boundary Commission electoral review, i.e., yes, they might have the right number of councillors, number of voters to councillors, but they do not always have common identities and interests. And I don't feel that leads to promoting effective local government. The only part that fulfills the aim, in my opinion, is that the councillor represents approximately the same number of voters. That might be important, but I do feel that in some of the rural areas, that wasn't the most important part. I think we could have discussed it further and perhaps come to an agreement, but I'm afraid tonight I have no alternative but to vote against this proposal. But thank you to everybody involved for all the work that's gone on. Thank you.
Ian, who was the other person who wished to speak?
Councillor Hayhurst, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Councillor?
Councillor Hayhurst, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hayhurst, yeah, can't see. You there?
You're muted, Councillor Hayhurst, if you're speaking. Councillor Hayhurst, you're muted at present.
Do you wish to know who Councillor Newhouse?
5 to support it.
You need to know who to do.
I don't need to know.
Right.
I'll just try Councillor Hayhurst again. I'll just call them again, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Councillor Hayhurst, are you there?
Can the administrator of the Zoom meeting not unmute him? Whoever it is.
No, I'm afraid we don't have that power. Yes, we do. We can hear you. Thank you,
Mayor,
Councillor.
I can't.
You can hear me now. I'm obviously having problems. I'm actually in the Outer Hebrides at the moment, so I'll have to shout long and hard. I've got to say that I am very disappointed at the proposals that have been put forward. I have over the last few months said many things about joining the many sorts of gaps that have been in this council. And sadly, it seems that we're back to square one. This is a Lytham St Anne's Conservative scheme which has been put forward with no consideration for the rural areas. I'm very sorry to see that the rural areas have been treated abysmally in this without any sort of any consultation. And I know that I know that virtually every parish council in rural Fylde is up in arms about this. Having said that, I'm delighted that it's going to be the Boundary Commission that make the decisions, because at least that will be independent. But the fact is that there was supposed to be 3 considerations, and all that's happened is that the numbers have been sorted out, and the other 2 considerations, such as effective government and also making sure that various places which have got similar interests would be put together, have sadly not been met. Obviously, my area is at the most that has the most problems, in the fact that the 2 places that I represent, Elswick and Little Eccleston, are going to be split up according to these recommendations, and they're likely then to be controlled by councillors who are will be elected from the areas where the most population. In Little Eccleston's situation, it would be Staining, which is 7 miles away and which has absolutely nothing in common with Little Eccleston. And in Elswick's case, it would be Newton with Scales, which again has absolutely nothing in common. Both of them are 7 miles away, and I said at the Finance and Democracy meeting, we might as well have been twinned with Mars for as much as the effect that will have. Having said that, I'm wasting my time speaking tonight, because this is a group decision which has been foisted on the rural areas, and I have to make my comments to the Boundary Commission because I'm completely wasting my time here. And also the other thing is to have 2 councillors in rural areas covering huge areas is absolutely ridiculous. I have been a single member councillor for 42 years on Fylde Borough and 12 years on Lancashire County Council. And I've got to say that what you've got to do in the rural areas is make the areas as small as possible, so that people will have the necessary local knowledge in order to do the job. To expect somebody to cover an area of 7 miles is absolute nonsense, I'm afraid. And I've found it very difficult being a county councillor covering Fylde West Division, where that was the case. And the fact is that basically we should be making the rural areas as small as possible, even though they will still be extensive areas. So I say again, I'm wasting my time tonight, but obviously I will obviously be making my comments to the Boundary Commission. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak?
Yes, Chairman, there's 3 hands raised. There's Councillor Harrison, Councillor Green and Councillor Singleton.
Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to wholeheartedly support these proposals. I think the team have done an excellent job. I wasn't part of the working group, but I'm very impressed with what they come up with. I understand the issues they have to face, but I do have concerns that some of the comments we're hearing from the rural councillors are nothing more than thinly disguised gerrymandering to ensure their over-representation. We can't go on with the situation where we have a rural ward represented by 600 people, representing, sorry, 600 people, where we've got urban wards with nearly 2,000. It can't go on, because otherwise we have a very small tail wagging a very large job. So on that basis, I support these wholeheartedly, and I will make representation to that effect to the Boundary Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Being a member of the working group is not just about making the time to turn up and attend the meetings. This is a really important issue that we had to deal with. And if the only thing you can do is turn up and attend the meetings and not spend any time whatsoever outside that, working out what you want, what you think fits, then I'm sorry, maybe it wasn't appropriate to be on the working group. I had an awful lot of outside that working group to look at what I thought was appropriate and discuss with residents across Fylde, both rural and town, to ask what they thought, to ask how certain areas fitted together, etc. So, you know, you can make the comments that it sort of came up really quickly and we didn't have time in the end to deal with stuff. Yes, time was against us because of the deadline set by the Boundary Commission, not set by us, but set by the Boundary Commission. But, you know, it's an important committee, it's an important working group, and find the time or find someone to sit on the working group that can find the time. Even Councillor Buckley and I don't always agree on everything. So, you know, there's this huge sort of assumption that maybe a couple of people have decided in the Conservative group what's happening, end of story. No, Councillor Buckley and I don't always agree on everything. Thankfully, our disagreements are usually very pleasant, but they are still there. I've made my submissions based on what I've spoken to other people about, and it's worked round. And this, and the submission we've made or we're about to make is where we're at. The comments about splitting wards, sorry, that Councillor Hayhurst made, it's happened in a lot of places, even in urban. Oh my goodness. The ward I stand for at the moment has been split, and one part of it's making this massive move towards working with a rural area, which I think is fantastic. And I'm quite accepting of that. It's not mine. It's not my ward. It's the residents' ward. It's where I currently stand. And I'll stand where is most suitable when the boundaries have been done, not where I think I should be. We've had boundary changes before. I remember them, God help me, from 20 years ago, and we all adjusted, and we will adjust again this time. You know, we have, I know, currently councillors that only attend council meetings if it affects the ward they're standing for. Wholly inappropriate. Yes, you represent your ward members, but you also make decisions for the whole of Fylde borough. And that's what we've all got to remember. It's not my ward against yours. It's not rural against urban. It is about the whole of Fylde borough. And I am a little bit confused as well, where people are saying, I will make my own submission to the Boundary Commission. Okay, the deadline for submission was the 5th of April. So guys, good luck with that.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Singleton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to pick up on one or two things from Councillor Hayhurst. and that is where it was quoted as it's a Lytton St Anne's Conservative scheme. Now there was Councillor Nolte and Councillor Rhodes, and indeed myself. Now I'm a true rural conservative. I'm not, definitely not, a Lytton St Anne's councillor. So let's put that to bed straight away. So I had an input into this, and I think it was a fair input. Where we say rural areas should be smaller, we are in a reduction areas smaller than others. In any kind of a reduction scheme, you will not satisfy everyone. That's a fact of life. But I think it's the best option we've got, considering we're reducing 15 councillors, and I would support this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Singleton. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak?
There's Councillor Redcliffe, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Radcliffe?
Yes, I just wanted to provide a perspective on this as somebody who wasn't directly involved. And clearly, this was somewhat of a poisoned chalice, because in a sense, if you'd have come up with some proposals that everybody was happy with, then that probably would have been very inappropriate putting forward in front of the Boundary Commission, because I don't see how you could keep everybody absolutely happy and provide a coherent, sustainable, serious scheme to the Boundary Commission that hopefully they will approve. The criteria is there for all of us to see. I do understand the challenge is always going to be in rural file, where you've got small dispersed communities and giving them a link with each other. But in terms of achieving electoral equality, I think what we're offering here is probably as near to what you can get that does that. I also think that community interests and identities have been a genuine attempt has been made to respect those. And also, in terms of promoting effective and convenient local government, there's such a strong argument for 2 or 3 councillors representing democratically and sharing the load, etc. I really don't see how anybody can actually contest that. I'm sorry that some people aren't happy with it for different reasons, but as I say, as somebody who has looked at it from the outside, I hope that it finds favour with the Boundary Commission, and I do think that it's likely to, because it does achieve. I know there's this variance in Freckleton, 13.4%, but the argument has been put forward, a lucid argument, in terms of if they hadn't done that, the impact it would have on neighbouring areas and communities, which would have been a very negative one. So really, in the round, I have to say, well done to the group working together across group working group, and thank you for their work and the conclusions they came to, which I think are sound.
Thank you, Councillor Richard. Is there anybody else here?
Yes, there is, Mr. Mayor. There's Councillor Saywood.
Right, Councillor Settle. Sorry?
Saywood.
Oh, Saywood, sorry. I've got my hearing aid in as well. Councillor Saywood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to cast our minds back to the start of this item, where Councillor Lee requested a recorded vote. So I'd like to just ensure, being a stickler for the rules, that we're going to have a vote for having the recorded vote. And I would also like to second Councillor Lee's request for a recorded vote. So I'd like to put that on record.
Thank you, Councillor Saywood. If there is nobody else, then
Mr. Mayor, may I sum up,
Councillor
please?
Small.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, I was just
well,
going to call you.
Thank you. Well, I was on the working group, and can I first of all express my thanks to all the members of that working group, Councillor Nolte, Councillor Old, Councillor Lee, who actually sat in on a couple of the meetings. It was a really, really hard job to do. And from that point of view, we looked at all of the areas really carefully. I know Councillor Nolte will agree with this. We looked at the rural areas exceptionally closely to try and get as much of a balance as we possibly could. And we went back on it. We went back on it a number of times to actually try and get the absolute best balance that we could achieve. I'm sad that some members feel they can't support it, because obviously we're trying to do this with the best of intentions. And I do reject that it was, I think somebody said it was a kind of urban Tory kind of answer to it. That was not the intention. It was, we've actually achieved quite a good result. The variances, with the exception of Freckleton, and we debated Freckleton long and hard over that variance, and we couldn't come up with anything better in the end. Nobody could. And I think people, members need to remember that it wasn't our ideas. Once we put those ideas, it went to the officers to actually see if they fit, and did fit in with the criteria that was the Boundary Commission wanted. So each and every step of the way, there was actually said, yes, you can do this, or no, you can't do that, come back on it. So what we have come up with, I think, is the best solution. Does it please everybody? No, but it was the best that we could achieve. And we actually, I think we've got as near as we could to getting a good result. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm still happy to second this.
Thank you. Can I ask for 3 other members to support the recorded vote, please?
Mayor, there's hands going up. There's well over three more now.
Councillor
You've got plenty,
Nolte,
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Henshaw. Councillor Withers, Councillor Hayhurst.
Yeah.
Yes, right. Thank you. We will go ahead with the recorded vote now.
Thank you. I hope I'm audible to all members. I'll, in the usual way, do a roll call of members, and if you could indicate if you are for, against, or abstaining, please. Councillor Ben Aitken.
For.
Councillor Frank Andrews.
Abstain.
Councillor Peter Anthony.
For.
Councillor Tim Arnott.
Abstain.
Councillor Mark Bamford.
Abstain.
Councillor Brenda Blackshaw.
Abstain.
Councillor Paula Brearley.
Against.
Councillor Karen Buckley.
For.
Councillor Alan Clayton.
Against.
Councillor Delma Collins.
For.
Councillor Peter Collins.
Against.
Councillor Chris Dixon.
For.
Councillor Sue Fazakerley.
For.
Councillor Trevor Fiddler.
For.
Councillor Ellie Gaunt.
For.
Councillor Brian Gill. Councillor Gill.
Against.
Sorry, against, I beg your pardon, against for Councillor Gill. Councillor Shirley Green.
For.
Councillor Noreen Griffiths.
Abstain.
Councillor Peter Hardy. Councillor Peter Hardy. Councillor Will Harris.
For.
Councillor Gavin Harrison.
For.
Councillor Paul Hayhurst.
Against.
Councillor Karen Henshaw.
Against.
Councillor Paul Hodgson.
Against.
Councillor Matthew Lee,
Against.
Councillor Cheryl Little.
For.
Councillor Roger Lloyd,
Against.
Councillor Michelle Morris,
For.
Councillor Ed Nash,
For.
Councillor Sally Nash Walker,
For.
Councillor Jane Nixon,
For.
Councillor Linda Nulty,
Against.
Councillor David O'Rourke,
For.
Councillor Bobby Rigby,
For.
Councillor Michael Saywood,
For.
Councillor Vin Settle,
For.
Councillor Elaine Silverwood,
Against.
Councillor John Singleton,
For.
Councillor Roger Small,
For.
Councillor Heather Speak,
Against.
Councillor Ray Thomas,
For.
Councillor Tommy Threlfall, Councillor Stan. Thank you. Councillor Stan Strudgell,
For.
Councillor Viv Wilder,
For.
Councillor Michael Withers,
For.
the Mayor, Councillor Angela Jakes, for the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Richard Redcliffe.
For.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Tracy, could I just interrupt? I believe Councillor Hardy was trying to vote but couldn't get his microphone off mute. I believe he was trying to abstain. Yes, he was. Yeah.
Make a note of that. Thank you.
Okay, that's 29 for, 12 against, and 6 abstentions.
Right, so that is carried. Thank you. Agenda item 15, constitutional amendment meeting scheduling. And I invite Councillor John Singleton to introduce the item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The agenda tonight, Mr. Mayor, contains a minor but very useful amendment for members. The meeting schedule for the new municipal year is not presented to members of the council until the last ordinary meeting prior to the AGM, as this evening. The recommendation is to simply amend the wording of Part 4, paragraph 4.3, with no later than in place of at. So what that means, it makes the constitution read, the council will agree a schedule of ordinary meetings no later than the last ordinary meeting before the annual general meeting in the preceding year. By presenting the schedule of the meetings earlier, it will benefit officers and members by giving more visibility of future meetings, especially when it comes to holidays and things like that. So it's I propose a recommendation on page 42. I also have a seconder in Councillor Gaunt. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gaunt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to second this recommendation.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak on this item?
It doesn't appear to be, Mr. Mayor, no.
Right, thank you. We'll go straight to the vote then. All those in favour, please show.
Mr. Mayor, I can see 45 votes in favour, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. That is clearly carried. Right, that is the end of the agenda for tonight, and I'd like to thank all the councillors for attending, and I will formally close the meeting. And just to say, please, even though things are looking a little easier, please do your best to stay safe. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, Mr. Mayor.
No, Mr. Mayor.
No, Mr. Mayor.